So this is the film that came right after Pink Flamingos, which was a pivotal point,
Yep.
early
Definitely was.
pivotal point in your career. It was a big hit.
Pink Flamingos was.
Yeah.
Female Trouble was not.
Pink Flamingos is a big hit.
Yeah.
So, and it was also, I think, a film that had pushed pretty far in in terms of shock humor.
Yeah.
So, what did that mean, for the follow-up?
I think I made the right decision to never try to top that
Yeah.
in the shock value thing. I think if I had it, I wouldn't be here today. I think I would have gone into a corner, painted myself in. I could have never got out. Female Trouble, oddly enough, did not open as a midnight movie. It opened at the RKO 59th Street Theater, I remember. It was not an A-list first-run house, but it was a first-run house. And it was a giant blizzard the night of the opening. And we had it, and everybody came. Divine, we had limos. We did the whole bit, right? New Line gave us a real premiere. But we had to get home on our own. The limos just dropped us all. They did not stay, which I was all right. We were amazed to be in one in the first place. But, and it got, I remember, a great review in Variety by that wonderful reviewer that actually was really supportive. He did reviews of porn movies, underground movies, and everything, usually very favorable. Got a great review in Variety, and the rest not so great. And audiences didn't know what to make of it, really, even the ones with Pink Flamingos. They wanted me to try and top it, I think. I think they came in looking for that. But there were certain people that liked it. But as the years went on, it got more and more popular. People liked it more. And I think today it's probably the most popular of the Divine vehicle movies that I made. It's my favorite one of them, certainly. And I think it's certainly a much better made film than Pink Flamingos. Of course, when Criterion puts them out, they all look good. they can disguise anything. They could make Hag in a black leather jacket look like Ben-Hur. But so I think when it first came out, people didn't know quite what to make of it. People didn't hate it or anything, but it was not a big success. And it never really turned into a midnight movie then either. Divine always wanted to be Elizabeth Taylor. And in this movie, he's the closest to Elizabeth Taylor. And I say he because Divine was not transgendered in any way. He had no desire to be a woman. He never walked around in drag. But really, it was Isabel Sarli, who I was paying tribute in that movie, Argentinian actress that worked with her husband, her lover, Armando Bo. And they were like the Russ Meyer, Erica Gavin of that country, only she made all the movies with him. And they were popular here right around the time of Female Trouble in the Spanish theaters. And Variety reviewed them. That's the only place I ever knew about them. And so we would go to see them, and she was great. And there's that one scene in it where the only time they made a film in America where Isabel Sarli is walking through Times Square, and they're in the car following her, and that's exactly what I did in Pink Flamingos, certainly, of seeing her just on the street in a hidden camera.
Right. Divine, I think, did also say that this was his favorite film, and you can totally see this is, I think, like an incredibly generous, like, star vehicle. I mean,
it was a vehicle written for Divine.
He starts with all the high school scenes. There are sex scenes, there are performance scenes.
He
There's
gets
a
to
death
fuck
scene.
himself in it. He's a scene where he has sex with himself, basically.
So, obviously, so you did write it with Divine in mind. And you mentioned the Sarli films. I'm wondering what other films were you thinking of, as you were writing this film? Because in some ways, this is like a total melodrama in a way. It's a full-on melodrama. It has the arc of a melodrama, all the trials and tribulations of this woman. Like everything imaginable happens to her.
Well, I was certainly thinking of I Want to Live, the Susan Hayward movie, who gets the death penalty at the end. I was thinking of Boom because Divine loved Elizabeth Taylor movies, and we saw all of them. Even the ones like Hammersmith is out, or some of the ones that were really bombs.
Right.
We went to see all of them. And so melodramatic movies, Douglas Sirk came a little later. I knew
this was around
movies.
the time that Sirk was
more
being
polyester, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, I always knew about Imitation of Life. That one, but I hadn't really. Fassbinder reinvented Sirk, I think.
And I think of all your films, this one has certain affinities with Fassbinder and Sirk.
Well, I was certainly seeing those movies then, and and I still love Fassbinder. I think he's great. I only met him once. And he pretended he couldn't speak English, so you complimented him. Then he spoke English. But I think he's still a great, great filmmaker, as Douglas Sirk, and I met him once too. And it just, those kind of melodramatic movies, more like The Big Cube with Lana Turner and Portrait in Black and Susan Slade, where the baby catches on fire and Troy Donahue puts it out. Those kind of melodramas were always very important to me. I always liked them.
You talk about the reputation of this film sort of like growing over the years. And I think you're often called this a really prophetic figure in American cinema, American pop culture. And in some ways, I think this
Other
is
things, yeah.
this is one of the most prophetic films because I think what it really anticipates is, I think what a lot of your work anticipates, and you were doing this before anybody else, was just this obliteration of the boundaries between high and low. And this film is I don't know if sophisticated is necessarily the word, but like you can connect a lot of what's going on in this film, the ideas certainly to Genet, to Diane Arbus, but it's also a film that I think anticipates, reality TV, sensationalism, and talk show exhibitionism, and all that stuff. So it's kind of like a film that connects high and low.
Well, I think that's true because at the same time, I grew up going to the drive-in and watching the most exploitation movies and seeing foreign films. Those were the two things that I tried to put together. And then underground movies, which came out in the middle of that kind of when I was seeing it. So to me, I always loved the art films. I mean, I grew up on Divine hated them. I loved them.
Did you bring him to? Did you see a lot of films?
Yes, with Tripping. We used to go to Bergman, and that's the one when he said I've told this story before, but it's true. In Hour of the Wolf, when she rips her face off, that's the one. So that's it. We're out of here, and I'm not seeing any more of these movies. We're only seeing Elizabeth Taylor movies. And so Divine and I would go to the movies. He loved Russ Meyer movies, certainly. And I think this has very much to do with Vixen, too, at the time. The whole fish thing at the end is right from Vixen. It was a joke on that because she did an erotic dance with a fish in Vixen.
This is one of several of your films that feature trials.
Yeah.
I think it's a trial of Pink Flamingos.
I had a trial and lots of them, yeah.
Yeah. And you actually did go to a lot of trials.
I went to a lot of trials in the beginning. I can't today for many reasons, but then I did. I went to the Manson trial. Which influenced me more than any of them. I went to the Patty Hearst trial. I went to the Move trial twice in Philadelphia. I went to the Hanafi Muslim trial. I went to a lot of the trials, definitely. And they were amazing theater. And the reason is because I would have been a defense lawyer if I wasn't a film director for the worst ones. That's what I would have done. Mm-hmm. And I still visit people in prison. And I still miss that I didn't do that in life, be a defense lawyer, but a big one, for dramatic trials. And I think that's why I always had them in it. And there's was influenced by Witness for the Prosecution. Like I can think of other movies that had really great trial scenes. But when we shot that film, the real thing is they have the gas chamber in Maryland.
Right.
But we carried that electric chair into the real prison. And the warden let us do it. And the warden is in polyester. He plays a cop. But they let us carry that electric chair into that prison in front of other prisoners. Like, what? They're bringing that back? And I later went and taught in that prison and showed Female Trouble in the prison, sitting there with just my projector and all the prisoners in those little things they make out of rags that they sit on in this big gym. And they were all saying, "You're allowed to show us this?" That's what they kept saying when I would show it to them. They were like, "What? Why are you in here? Why are we watching this movie?" It was kind of fun.
Some of them must have liked it.
I guess they didn't kill me or anything. I wasn't taken hostage or anything. But it was just me in the big gym with like maybe 50 people sitting around on the floor with me with old 16-millimeter projectors showing it up on a home movie screen. I was allowed to do that. Can you imagine today? That would never happen, I don't think.
When did you discover Genet?
Genet in high school, and I know that of course I must have named Divine because of that.
Right.
But I don't remember that's the reason. I remember the reason I picked the name Divine was because in the Catholic religion they always told us this was divine, and it was a term they used, but it had to come from that. But I don't remember but I did read Genet in high school, so it had to. And when I first read it, well, Grove Press, I always said, saved my life, really, because I read all those books. But Genet was the one that still I loved the most. And, if I have to pray, it's either, I can't decide if it's him or Pasolini, which one I pray to. So I think that he was a huge influence, yes. And I thought his books were amazing. And I love the idea also, I read Saint Genet, that basically he became so famous for being a criminal that society women would invite him and hope he stole from their house when he'd come to the party. That was the ultimate chic thing. So that very much led to Female Trouble, definitely.
Right. Can we maybe talk a little bit about just the making of the film? You know, to
There's a whole book about it. Have you seen it? Chris Solomon wrote an entire book about the making of Female Trouble. It's very nice. It's a lovely, lovely book.
But if you look at your early films, just progressing from the shorts to the early features, and then Pink Flamingos, and then this Female Trouble, and then Desperate Living, there seem to be like each one is a step up in terms of complexity. You know,
Well, I learned a little
technical
more each time,
difficulty, the demands you place on your actors. With coming into this film, do you remember there were specific things that you wanted to do? Wanted to try out.
I wanted
There's a
them
lot
all
of
to look
there's a
like
lot of
Hollywood movies,
right.
but they never did. But this one looked a little more like one. Yeah, I always wanted them to look like that. I never wanted them to look like natural. I didn't want them to look like, whatever the term then was for mumblecore. Even though that's why everybody yelled in my movies, because I want to make sure you could hear. I didn't have good sound a lot. But I mean, the sound work was fine, but I'm just saying in the early movies you couldn't really hear so well with a mic. So that's why everybody's yelling. That's not their bad acting. That's my bad directing, or good directing, whichever you decide. Because it was all influenced by the theater of cruelty and all that yelling and that lunacy, Marat-Sade and living theater and all that insane stuff. And and Tura Satana, because her monotone yelling in that movie was definitely an influence on all of us.
There's also a lot of dialogue in this film, I think, more so than the
They had to memorize pages of dialogue without any cuts. And Edith,
was it difficult working with these actors? And
no, that's what Mink always said. They call us amateurs. I'd like to see some of these other people remember 3 pages of single-spaced dialogue, because one mistake cut. There was no coverage, really. Well, there was a little, because in Female Trouble was the first time we had double system where the sound wasn't recorded right on the film as it ran through, like on mag stripe, like it was in Pink Flamingos, which was what all newscasters used then. That's what video. They didn't have video yet, but that's what they used. Paul Morrissey did the same thing, and the Warhol films were shot the exact same way with the same kind of film and the same kind of mag strike. So for me, I had a film crew. I had like 4 or 5 people working. So to me, Female Trouble was definitely big budget at the time. It felt like.
What's your biggest budget to date?
Yes. And also, you look at Van Smith's costumes in it. I mean, he did an amazing job, I think. And I think from just looking at the restored version of Female Trouble, which I did today, you really see his clothes in it. They really show up. And they were on a budget of, I don't know what, but very little. And as they always say in Baltimore, they can make a dollar holler. Well, he could.
So even though this was a relatively big budget film in context, were there any difficulties in terms of
It was always
the
difficult.
shoot, because
I mean, they were like 20-hour days always. In the Lipstick Beauty Salon, which was one of the girls' mother's beauty salon, let us film there, and then we had to come back, but they didn't plug in something or blew the fuses, and the pipes froze, and the whole place flooded, and I still talked to them to letting us come back, which was amazing.
So you said there were actually pretty good reviews for this film.
There were some, and there were, the horrible ones. I'm sure there were horrible ones too. Like Rex Reed, the one we loved the best, that we used on every poster, was, where do these people come from? Where do they go when the sun goes down? Isn't there a law or something? That was our ad campaign.
Do you, in the sense of contextualizing this within your career, where do you think
I think it's my favorite of my Divine vehicles, definitely. I think if Divine was supposed to play Mole, the butch lesbian in Desperate Living, because I thought that would be a real switch to have Divine playing a butch lesbian. But he was doing a play at the time, so he couldn't. I think, and in Polyester was the first time where he got good reviews, mostly because he went against the type that had been so established in Female Trouble and Pink Flamingos, of being a monster, basically, you were frightened of, right? But hippies liked, and crazy gay people liked. Normal gay people didn't. But all people that didn't fit in with their own minorities. Bikers liked Divine.
Right.
Criminals like Divine, lesbians like Divine, but regular gay people maybe didn't.
Do you remember the reception to the film among gay people and hippies, which is like they're sort of a target?
We made fun of hippies, but they always came. I mean, all my movies made fun of hippies.
Yeah.
But we were hippies, sort of. But we made fun of them. And Divine and I used to go throw sugar on communes in San Francisco steps that only owed health food and leave meat outside stuff. I mean, these were little acts.
Right.
We were a cell of bad taste. And I mean, the censor board tried to stop us. That's the one. When this finally was done, I thought, this is going to pass the censors. I'm not, because she hated us so much from Multiple Maniacs and Pink Flamingos. And the one scene where Gator gets caught with his girlfriend and Divine comes in, well, she said, she can sit there, but she can't move. And then she said to Divine, well, you can't show that vagina. And I said, well, that's a man. And that's where she said to me the famous line, don't tell me about sex. I was married to an Italian.
Right.
But I used that line later in A Dirty Shame. But she handed me the scissors, and I had to actually cut that. I think they have the little piece of film, too, that we found going through the thing.
Wow.
To my brand new, beautiful print that I paid a lot of money for, I had to mar it and cut it so there was a big, ugly splice in it because of her.
So that was a mandated cut, but were there other things that you shot that you left out of the film?
Some, not a lot. There was a whole subplot where because everybody got ATD then, which was aid to the totally disabled, which was like getting a grant, because if you got it for life. I know people that got it for 10 or 20 years. I mean, it'd be Trump's nightmare, really, because it was a ripoff, right? But Divine was on it. Divine got aid to the totally disabled because he told the shrink he wanted tits bigger than his head. And so people got this. So there was a scene in the movie where the ATD worker is coming over and Gator and Edith get in disguise, and Edith gets in an oxygen tent and puts on a normal wig, and he puts on a short head wig and goes straight, and they act real normal. She's like wheezing and everything, and then as soon as the worker leaves, they go, ha, 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 jump out laughing that they ripped off the system. But it just got cut because it was a subplot too far away from the main story, I think. We had a scene where Mink committed a federal crime for real, which is basically throwing garbage inside a mailbox. So that was a federal crime. So I wanted to make sure that we had that on film. So it was kind of nerve-wracking. We looked around, had it all set up, and then she went and dumped garbage in a working mailbox. And then there's another scene in the movie that's completely cut, a subplot, where during the trial of Divine, Chiclet and Concetta come in like the Soledad brothers with guns to break Divine out of the courtroom, and are killed in the courtroom. So you never really think what happened to them at the end, because that's what happened, but that got cut out. There's another scene where Divine is on the school bus in the beginning, and she's smoking, and the bus driver catches her, and she says, I know you were trying to look at my tits. That's all. You're trying to look at my tits. And then another scene where the parents are arguing with Divine about her lying. She's always lying. And there's another scene where they catch the girl that snitched on her for eating the meatball sandwich and shove her head on a toilet or attack her in the bathroom. That got cut.
Right.
So yes, I finally started cutting things. Other movies you can see I never cut anything.
And this was just
that fire burned in Pink Flamingos for an hour.
Right. And this was just in the interest of moving
yeah,
this
just
along?
moving it along. Yeah. That's a thing you learned. If you think you should cut it, you should. All Oscar bait movies are too long.
Exactly. I think all your early films are like 90 minutes.
All
like
my movies
almost
are
on the
90
dot.
minutes. Every one of them was within 87 and 95 minutes. Yeah, there's no such thing as a good long joke. And I'm still the 16 millimeter, 3 reels.
Right.
It's 3 30-minute reels, a beginning, a middle, and an end. I always loved telling the story with music, but I always had garage music and hillbilly novelty songs and then, very ironic songs too. At the same times, it would be very holy songs or that kind of all-American kind of songs to use, always with Divine. But whenever Divine was walking down the street, I always had good music, like good, dirty garage music, right?
Boom, 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 boom. The D-I-G means look. D-I-G means stare. D-I-G means see. D-I-G means glare. D-I-G means...
And that scene where Divine is walking down, the difference is in Pink Flamingos, she's walking down the street and everybody's like gawking at her. Well, in Female Trouble, she had scars on her face, so people were polite. They ignored her. They didn't want to laugh when she was disabled. I think. Because they don't really react that much. Except my friend that did have a glass eye for real, and he pops it out. That was very Girl Can't Help It.
Right.
Because when they all look up at Jane Mansfield and the ice melts, that was definitely the influence there. And I always thought up the ad campaign in the beginning too, or the like a true exploiter. And the titles were important, I think, too. Female Trouble was, she had a lot of problems. That was the ad campaign. Yeah, that sort of summed it up. And we used shots of just this one deadpan shot of Divine with the rollers in her hair kind of staring out, looks like a mugshot. That was just a continuity shot. That was never expected to be a still.
Right.
But I always believed in unit photographers. I always had them there. And I think we have a lot of pictures from Female Trouble. That was covered heavily on the set. For a low-budget movie, we had as many as a Hollywood movie. And I think that really helps a film's reputation in the long run. What's going to end up in magazine articles and books or everything is people don't remember everything about the movie. They remember the stills. And so we had a lot of stills. And so I'm glad we did that. There was also a scene of Divine taking a bubble bath. And I know why I cut it, because Divine looked like a normal drag queen there, the ones we were making fun of, the ones that hated him. So why would we leave that in? It was too Miss America. It was like straight drag. It wasn't the kind. We wanted to scare other drag queens. Divine used to go, the few times he ever was in drag and like drag balls and stuff, he used to go to Washington and carrying a chainsaw with fake scars on his face. And the other drag queens like hated him because they knew he was making fun of it, which he was. There was no big girls either then. That was another thing, especially nude or in that wedding scene wearing that full wedding dress with bush showing. That's still cutting edge to be a bride walking down the aisle showing full bush, especially today when bush is a thing of the past. I feel bad for the people that worked at the A200. Where do crabs go now? As the animal rights this, I'd like to know what crabs are supposed to do now that there's no more bush on young people. It's not fair for the environment.
Well, that's amazing. Thank you, John.
Sure, thank you for coming out and doing this.